In the summer of 1943, the earth around a quiet Soviet city became a waiting trap. Beneath fields of wheat and wildflowers lay hundreds of thousands of mines. Across the horizon, thousands of tanks idled behind curtains of dust while artillery crews checked their sights one final time. Pilots tightened harnesses, infantrymen clutched rifles, and commanders studied maps knowing that dawn would unleash a battle unlike any the world had ever seen. Everyone sensed history was holding its breath. No one yet knew which empire would emerge from the storm. Only months earlier, the German army had suffered its catastrophic defeat at Stalingrad. For the first time, Adolf Hitler's aura of invincibility had been shattered. The Wehrmacht still possessed formidable strength, but its momentum had been broken. Hitler believed that a decisive offensive could restore German prestige, cripple Soviet reserves, and seize back the initiative on the Eastern Front. His chosen target was the Kursk salient, a massive bulge in the Soviet line stretching nearly 150 miles westward. By pinching off this protrusion from the north and south, Germany hoped to encircle hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops in a single devastating blow. The operation was given the name Operation Citadel. Yet while Germany prepared, the Soviet High Command was already reading many of its intentions. Through intelligence gathered from reconnaissance, intercepted communications, partisan reports, and information supplied by Allied sources, Soviet commanders developed an increasingly clear picture of the coming assault. Marshal Georgy Zhukov urged Joseph Stalin to resist the temptation of launching a premature attack. Instead, he argued that Germany should be allowed to exhaust itself against carefully prepared defenses before the Red Army unleashed overwhelming counteroffensives. It was a gamble built on patience rather than speed. Across the Kursk salient, the Soviet Union transformed the countryside into one of the most heavily fortified defensive systems in military history. Nearly 8 defensive belts were constructed in some sectors, stretching more than 180 miles deep. Engineers dug thousands of miles of trenches, built reinforced bunkers, laid approximately 500,000 anti-tank mines alongside hundreds of thousands of anti-personnel mines, and positioned artillery to create deadly overlapping fields of fire. Every village became a fortress. Every hill concealed another gun. Every road became a killing ground. The scale of what was gathering defied imagination. Germany assembled roughly 780,000 soldiers, around 2,700 tanks and assault guns, over 2,000 aircraft, and nearly 10,000 artillery pieces. Facing them stood approximately 1.9 million Soviet troops supported by more than 5,000 tanks and self-propelled guns, over 2,800 aircraft, and around 31,000 artillery pieces and mortars. Never before had so much armored strength been concentrated on a single battlefield. German confidence rested heavily upon new technology. The fearsome Tiger I possessed armor that few Allied guns could penetrate from the front, while the newly introduced Panther promised superior firepower and mobility. Massive Ferdinand tank destroyers carried devastating anti-tank guns capable of destroying enemy armor at remarkable distances. But sophisticated machines carried hidden weaknesses. Many Panthers suffered mechanical failures before reaching combat. Heavy vehicles struggled through minefields and muddy terrain, while Soviet engineers had designed their defenses specifically to slow armored advances and channel them into deadly ambushes. Just before dawn on July 5, 1943, the silence finally ended. Warned by intelligence that the attack was imminent, Soviet artillery struck German assembly areas moments before the offensive officially began. Shells exploded among waiting troops and vehicles, disrupting formations even before the first German assault crossed the line. Still, the attack surged forward. In the north, Colonel General Walter Model's 9th Army attacked toward the city of Orel, smashing into extraordinarily dense Soviet defenses. Every mile gained demanded immense sacrifice. Minefields halted armored columns while anti-tank guns emerged from concealed positions to engage advancing Tigers and Panthers. Infantry cleared mines under relentless fire as engineers worked desperately to open narrow corridors through fields filled with explosives. Progress came slowly. Sometimes only a few hundred yards separated success from disaster. Farther south, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein's Army Group South achieved greater momentum. Led by General Hermann Hoth's 4th Panzer Army and supported by the elite 2 SS Panzer Corps, German armored formations punched deeper into Soviet positions. Here, mobile warfare briefly returned as powerful spearheads exploited gaps and pressed toward Prokhorovka. For German crews inside steel monsters, every advance carried constant uncertainty. Dust blinded optics. Hidden mines crippled tracks. Soviet anti-tank rifles targeted vulnerable vision ports while artillery blanketed suspected routes. Victory often depended not only upon superior weapons but on endurance under relentless pressure. Across the battlefield, Soviet soldiers endured unimaginable conditions. Many remained inside trenches as bombs, shells, and machine gun fire transformed the landscape into a wasteland of shattered earth. Tank crews climbed into T-34s knowing they faced heavier German armor, yet they trusted their vehicles' reliability, mobility, and simple design. Mechanics repaired damaged tanks around the clock, while reserve formations waited patiently for the decisive moment. Every hour favored the defenders. Every German delay strengthened Soviet confidence. Above the battlefield, the skies became equally contested. Hundreds of aircraft fought for air superiority as German dive bombers attacked defensive positions and Soviet fighters challenged every sortie. Close air support played a crucial role, but neither side achieved complete control. Instead, pilots on both sides fought exhausting missions over smoke-filled horizons where burning tanks marked the progress of battle below. By July 12, events converged near the small railway station of Prokhorovka. The battle that followed became one of history's most famous armored clashes. Contrary to later myths, it was not a single collision involving thousands of tanks charging across open ground at once. Instead, it unfolded through chaotic, overlapping engagements fought at close range amid ravines, embankments, smoke, and confusion. Approximately 800 to 900 tanks and assault guns from both sides became involved throughout the fighting around the area. The Soviet 5th Guards Tank Army launched a massive counterattack against advancing German forces. T-34 crews deliberately closed the distance to neutralize the long-range advantage of German Tiger tanks. At point-blank range, engagements became brutal and intensely personal. Vehicles rammed one another. Burning fuel filled the air with black smoke. Commanders often lost sight of their own formations amid exploding shells and swirling dust. Although Soviet losses proved severe, the German advance stalled. That mattered more than individual tactical results. The Wehrmacht had expected a breakthrough. Instead, it found itself trapped in a battle of attrition against an opponent whose reserves seemed endless. While German commanders struggled to maintain momentum, events beyond Kursk further undermined Hitler's ambitions. On July 10, Allied forces landed in Sicily, forcing Germany to reconsider strategic priorities. Hitler increasingly diverted attention and resources toward emerging crises elsewhere. Then came the decisive Soviet response. On July 12, the Red Army launched Operation Kutuzov, attacking German positions around the Ural salient north of Kursk. Fresh Soviet armies struck exhausted German defenders who could no longer sustain offensive operations. The initiative was slipping away. Weeks later, Operation Rumiantsev drove south toward Belgorod and Kharkov, forcing German formations into continuous retreat. Soviet commanders shifted from carefully prepared defense to aggressive combined arms offensives involving armor, infantry, artillery, engineers, and overwhelming logistical support. The Red Army had matured into a force capable not only of surviving German attacks but of defeating them through operational excellence. Hitler reluctantly ordered Operation Citadel terminated. The opportunity for Germany to regain strategic dominance in the east had vanished. The cost was staggering. Combined casualties reached well over 1 million men killed, wounded, or missing across both sides during the wider Kursk campaign. Thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery pieces were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Entire villages disappeared beneath shellfire, while countless civilians found their homes transformed into battlefields. For ordinary soldiers, victory and defeat rarely matched the language of communiques. German veterans remembered the frustration of fighting an enemy that refused to collapse despite unimaginable punishment. Soviet survivors recalled endless days of terror inside trenches, deafened by artillery and surrounded by destruction, yet sustained by the belief that every hour they held the line brought final victory closer. The Battle of Kursk became far more than the largest tank battle in history. It represented the moment when Germany permanently lost the strategic initiative on the Eastern Front. From that summer onward, the Red Army maintained relentless pressure, pushing westward through Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, and ultimately into Berlin itself. Military historians continue to study Kursk because it revealed timeless lessons about intelligence, logistics, industrial power, technology, leadership, and preparation. Superior weapons alone could not overcome layered defenses, overwhelming reserves, and an opponent willing to absorb enormous sacrifice for strategic advantage. The battle demonstrated that modern warfare is decided not only by courage at the front but by factories, railways, engineers, and the ability to replace losses faster than the enemy. Today, the quiet fields around Kursk bear little resemblance to the inferno of 1943. Crops once again sway where tanks burned, and villages stand where artillery once thundered. Yet beneath that peaceful landscape rests the memory of one of humanity's greatest military confrontations. The Battle of Kursk did not simply determine the fate of a single campaign. It marked the irreversible turning of the tide on the Eastern Front, proving that the Third Reich's greatest offensives had reached their final limit, while the Soviet advance toward ultimate victory had only just begun.